Amazing, amazing. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the smooth jazz music, starting their morning or evening, depending on where you're at. I'm really excited about this episode of the Data Tea. It's been a minute since we've done one of these. There's been some recent news here at Coalesce. We joined forces with SYNQ. So we've got the CEO of SYNQ, or now the GM of that part of our business here at Coalesce. But while everybody's trickling in, let us know where you're listening in from. There's always an international audience, so I always enjoy seeing what cities and countries people are tuning in from for today. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Petr, to just do a quick intro and just let everybody know your background and a little bit about the story of how you started SYNQ.
Awesome. So thanks for having me. So hi, everyone. My name is Petr. I'm an engineer by background. So I spent, I think, at this point, more than 20 years building software. And I would say particularly like first 15 years or so, I've been starting a career as an engineer, growing to the tech lead, and eventually ended up running large technology organizations. And just before starting SYNQ, there was quite an interesting moment where I was in charge of about 150 people in the fintech overseeing technology. And as part of that, I was overseeing both data team as well as the engineering. And there was this moment where we had an incident on both sides of this organization. That's back in, I think, 2021. And it was a very different landscape to what we see today, where essentially engineers jumped on the incident and resolved it in about 30 minutes. And everything went quite well. And eventually we got to the root of it and solved it. But what I saw in the data side was very different. And we had a quite complex data pipeline at that point. And eventually it took days before I got an answer of what went wrong and why. And, how can we prevent such a situation in the future? And it was quite a tricky situation with some of the board reporting, which we had to fix afterwards. And that was the moment when I realized that there is this big discrepancy in the quality of tooling available to engineers and to data engineers or analytics engineers who are building this, I would say, very complex data systems. And I guess coming from the engineering background, my thinking was it's just another software. It's code, which is producing something which is then used by the business. And so I felt, well, why don't we take the practices from the engineering, which we already know and were at that point working from kind of the DevOps movement, and try to apply them into the data world. And so I guess at the same point, there was a lot of transition of engineering technology from having Git to be used to version the workflows. There was a lot of kind of new concepts being borrowed from engineering. But at that point, there was not that much going on in the, let's say, the reliability and observability space. So that was really the trigger where I felt like there was just this gap which has to be solved. And as an engineer and someone who worked in startups for my whole career, I realized this is the point where I should start a company.
Yeah, and Petr is pretty humble, so he probably wouldn't share this, but I got the chance to meet with one of your investors as we were going through the process of joining forces, and I think they shared something that was news to me, not something that you had shared with myself, but in your past two roles, you had basically helped those companies scale from roughly 10 million in ARR to north of 100, and obviously as you did that, you were the CTO of the business, and so you saw massive scale in operations in the R&D org. And it sounds like a portion of that was the data team. If I'm understanding you correctly, basically you saw how in the software engineering world, if something would break, how quickly you could figure out the root cause analysis, diagnose it, solve it. But then you would go look at the data team on the other side of your department, and it would be a much more difficult scenario for them to diagnose and then resolve and communicate. And so was that specific problem something that you felt like you wanted to always build the company around, or did you see that as a good entry point? Like, what was your thinking around having the conviction to start there and look at other adjacent areas?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess the reason why I felt that there is a need for this is also the background of companies where I worked at, where it was essentially a lot of data pipelines and let's say, complex data systems I was building for, at that point, a couple of years. And so I felt maybe before this whole cloud data warehousing and modern data stack, I was building a lot of reliable data systems before. And so I guess there was already a movement where we've seen companies solving let's say, the transformation element of the pipeline, where we've seen maturing practice from kind of like bunch of scripts just doing some SQL to actually more standardized way to build the pipelines. But at that point, the let's say, tooling for ensuring quality and reliability of these workflows was relatively new and still being developed. I think as well, to be fair, data teams themselves were maybe at that point just discovering that we're actually not, we have built all these pipelines. It's now business critical. We're driving these increasingly important processes in the company, and it sometimes breaks, and we need to figure out how we solve that. So I felt there was like a timing of the market where I think the first phase was a lot of companies and teams built those pipelines, and then they realized like, okay, there's the next level, which is it became critical. How do I make sure that it actually works all the time, given that we're kind of building business around it?
Yeah, that's helpful. And by the way, for anybody who is listening, there's quite a few people that were commenting from all over the US, different countries like France. Feel free to ask Petr any questions. I'll monitor the messages in the Q&A as we go. I'm curious, we just recently announced both SYNQ and Coalesce joining forces. Was there a specific turning point or an aha moment for you when you realized that the two companies would be stronger together than separate?
Yeah. I think one of these moments was when we did a first mutual demo, and there was a very particular point I remember where, essentially, from a Coalesce perspective, a lot of what I've seen is layer of governance which is applied on building the pipelines. So the concept of nodes, which is essentially abstracting away the raw SQL, where we, instead of almost like relying on every engineer or analyst in a company writing SQL from scratch, we kind of abstract to these nodes where you package a lot of functionality and create almost this like high level structure. And why this resonated with me a lot is that we thought about it that way from observability perspective. And again, it kind of is rooted for me in engineering, where if I build engineering system, I'm shipping services, and these services have a lot of stuff under the hood, but I'm trying to kind of abstract the system to this like higher level composable thing, which can then collaborate and like build this very complex thing on top. So I felt like that level of abstraction resonated because we started to build our observability in that way as well. We introduced the concept of data products, which were essentially our kind of attempt to build these abstractions as well, where we say there's a product in a company which is feeding business process. Let's monitor that. And so I think we both were abstracting away from tables, where to me, table is almost like a file. It's like it's there, it's doing its thing. But actually, when I'm building data pipelines, I think in the level above, I'm thinking about I'm going to deliver products to the company, and I'm going to build it from these governed nodes. So to me, that was kind of the match where I felt we thought about it in the same way. And at that point, we were building our testing engine and testing recommendations, where we literally, I think I went to the team and said, we need to standardize testing, because a lot of teams are asking us, like, how should we test specific scenarios or specific pipelines? And so we started building this testing advisor functionality, where we say, well, if it's a source, or if it's a join, or if it's an end product, here's how you can test it. And we basically wanted to package it. And that was almost like exactly the same thing as you guys did with the nodes.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I remember when we first did that mutual demo, and it took you like 2 minutes before you realized the value of our platform, which sometimes data engineers or customers don't realize until they go through a really large scale implementation. But your feedback was like, oh yeah, like you solve a problem that I see literally every day of large scale implementations that have tons of tribal knowledge, tons of technical debt, tons of recursive CTEs that cause more permutations and issues for an organization. And we have to go and solve those. And so I think you were so in touch with the pain points that we designed our platform from the ground up to solve that it was really easy for you to interpret the value proposition. And then on our end, actually, I remember when I had shared with the executive team that you're now on and with, that we were talking to you, Banta had done a bunch of research on SYNQ, and he saw some of the really opinionated blog posts and thoughts from SYNQ, and was basically like, hey, this is a perfect fit. Like, these guys are super experienced and knowledgeable, and they bring like a similar level of perspective to observability and quality that we do to transformations. And so I remember him just saying, like, this is the best option. Like, these would be the best guys that we could possibly work with. And so I think
Awesome.
a couple days later, he met you, and that was only validated or reinforced more. So
Awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah. And I think like, to me, if I look back these like 4 years or so, where we started a company, I was actually blogging a lot, and I was almost like complaining that the warehouses, which were kind of getting quickly adopted to the market, became so powerful that basically anyone can build any query. It will actually run. It will potentially cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But that's where I felt a lot of teams just built completely, overwhelming systems, where when we connected our systems to some of the let's say data platforms we were observing, I was actually shocked and worried. How can anyone touch this and change it? And how do they have a confidence to make a change and push things to production? So that's where I felt that there is a need to, first of all, bring a strong observability to the environment, but also do whatever we can to abstract away that overwhelming level of detail, and then kind of govern it better. And that goes from both transform and the quality perspective.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. So, as you're aware, and I'm sure a lot of the audience is aware, about a year ago, we had joined forces with CasterDoc in the cataloging space. We're now bridging together quality and observability. Historically, Coalesce was a transformation company, but it's a much broader surface area now than it was about a year and a half ago. And we're positioning or repositioning the platform as the data operating layer for AI and analytics. I think one of the most common requests that we had from customers was around data quality and observability, especially with the surface area that we had around transformations and cataloging, but now in the quality and observability space, all under one platform. When we say the data operating layer for AI and analytics, like, what does that mean to you around how these three separate products can perform a more cohesive operation that's unique as one platform?
So maybe I start from the perspective I know the best from the quality side, where I felt the quality is very good at, let's say, helping you detect issues and find out that something's wrong, and facilitate some level of incident management and the process of resolving issues. But what I was always thinking about is how and when can we bring it to the point that we can actually help solve them. And we started working on some of that solution probably somewhere in the last summer. But we realized it would be actually quite hard to bridge and make PRs to other code bases. And this, again, when we started talking, and I realized, like, wow, if we actually have a transform and quality and the catalog, which also has additional context together, we can actually close the loop and start to, let's say, build the workflows, which are very hard to do for any individual player without all the other components. Of course, companies have APIs and can collaborate, but to me, bringing it all together cohesively under, let's say, even one team, which can actually now operate across all of this, I think that was super attractive. Where if I look at it from market perspective, I think buyers rightfully now expect more from everyone. And I see it as a bit of a maturity of the market, where when we all started companies in 2020, it was very fresh. There was this new beast on the market, being the cloud data warehouse, and there was a lot of tooling missing around. And so now I think we see that this is all coming together to the later stage as a market, where things are consolidating, and ultimately the buyer wants the bigger thing and full solution. And I felt like that also was the reason why I felt like this makes sense. Let's join forces and let's build something more end to end, where we can deliver the workflows which actually solves the largest amount of the job which people actually have to do every day.
Yeah, that makes sense. As I've been thinking about it more, it's been really cool to see what is possible, even just internally with our 3 products under one platform. Like Jesse, for example, has been connecting the MCPs from Transform, Quality, Catalog, and using Claude, and has been able to do so much more quickly than anything that I think even our customers fully are aware of right now, which is super exciting on how we can take that to market and help customers when it comes to leveraging all this technology in a much more cohesive way. And so I think it's a unique position for us that I'm really excited about, to be able to provide so much more surface area. Like I really see us as the only modern company right now in the data space that has this complete of a platform when it comes to leveraging metadata for transforming data, whether that's in reaction to quality issues or observability issues, and diagnosing them, automatically solving them, leveraging the context from the catalog to enrich the development platform. Like there's so many ways that we can amplify these products together, which is why we position as data operating layer. Like it's so much more than transformation, so much more than quality, it's so much more than cataloging altogether. I see David's asking a question. Yeah. Hey, David from Toll Brothers. Will this be added as a feature within Transform, or will it be a standalone UI? It's kind of an interesting question because it's a separate product. And so, customers are using SYNQ as a separate UI right now. But coming back to what I was sharing earlier about some of the use cases that we've seen internally on how to bridge together, for example, the MCP of Quality and Transform and Catalog, we do see that user experience becoming more headless versus you having to go into a new tab, for example. I don't know, Petr, if you've got any thoughts there on that question. But just so you know, David he's a customer of ours at Toll Brothers. He uses Transform and Catalog, and so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Amazing, yeah. So maybe I'll actually go even one level deeper. Amazing to see the laugh coming from there. It's good. But we're coming one level deeper. Actually, I wrote a memo in the beginning of a company in 2022 where I said we should optimize the product in a way that the user spends the least amount of time in our UI. And the rationale was like, who wants to be dealing with data quality and incidents? I feel like any data practitioner wants to be building, who wants to be creating value by delivering new solutions. So we should be almost like a bit of like, let's say, insurance policy in the background, let's say. And so, of course, we have UI. There's a lot of things you can do in the UI, but in general, we try to see like, can we build workflows where we're gonna, let's say, inform you about things happening in Slack, and you can react to things in Slack without going to our product. So we've already, let's say, had a bit of a mindset of not dragging people to the product unless we have to. As part of that, especially throughout last year, we had another kind of internal strategy of let's make this all headless, because we had larger companies asking us to automate deployment of monitors or setting up some of the primitives and entities and things. So we're very close to basically full coverage, which means that almost like the entire platform can be used and set up without you going to UI, which makes it easier to integrate deeper to Transform product or Catalog product, where we already have an integration. We kind of already are publishing data from SYNQ to Catalog, so the business users can see about the ongoing incident, as well as we're taking information from the Transform. But I think in general, we will be looking for, let's say, bridging the workflows to where they make sense. So let's say if I'm developing pipeline, I think I should be building tests in that experience without going to different product. And on the other side, if I'm looking at the dashboard and I want to know if this is all good or if there's an incident, I shouldn't have to leave that workflow to go to quality to see anything. So I think I would almost look at it as now we are one company, so we have the luxury to basically decide where these things are, and we don't have to kind of push user across the interface. So it's of course going to take some time. So we're going to start as a bit more standalone, but we definitely have some ambitious plans to move the functionality around, and SYNQ can be already consumed from APIs, MCP, all that. So we are kind of ready to connect to wherever these workflows are.
Yeah. It's been cool to see some of the prototypes that Satish has built, for example, bridging all three products together under one platform. So David, if you haven't seen it yet, you should definitely check it out. I'm sure Dan Kimono will be knocking on your door any moment if you haven't. But it's a great product. I think the whole team was blown away by what you've built, Petr, and the SYNQ team, especially for a smaller company. Like the whole crew punches so far above their weight class, which is really, really awesome. So on a separate note, like when we did first meet, I remember I was asking you about like your plans for the future of SYNQ and what you were thinking. And I remember you saying that you're planning to go out and raise soon, but at the same time, you're seeing that the market is consolidating. And so it's clear that like that might be a part of the strategy for a lot of data companies. Snowflake, Databricks, everybody's trying to own the full stack. Like how do you see Coalesce carving out a different path with SYNQ being on board now and what we've had historically?
So definitely I would say Snowflake, Databricks are the giants sitting on top of the market. So I would say I wouldn't take them lightly. At the same time, like to truly be end-to-end product, it's just so much product to build, which means that even for these very large companies, there is still, I would say, a core technology and core DNA of what they are amazing at. And that's why they grew, and that's why they are so good at what they do. And building these all other functionalities is a bit of like peripheral, which means that I almost feel that you can still outperform these solutions if you really truly know what you're doing, and you let's say have enough experience of like the what the practitioners are actually dealing with, and how can we solve it in a ways which maybe even Snowflake doesn't have that energy to go to that level, because they of course have like the super large business at the core of it around the storage. And so I think in short, I think it's all around like us innovating fast enough on top of what we already have. And I think being a standalone player with just one, let's say, category of solutions, I think it's super hard because eventually you have to do so much more. And I think I always look at it more as like where's the market, where is the buyers, and what do they actually want? And I don't really see that there would be almost like disappearance of this. Like we need to have, something what helps us run the transformations to surface data to users and governance teams and deal with the data quality and all of these capabilities. I don't think any of these large platforms even has all of this. So in my mind, it's like a race. We'll have to keep going forward, and they will as well. But I think especially now after the merge, there is a lot we can work with. So I think that I'm not, let's say, that scared about that. And of course, I think the future is in how are we going to apply and leverage AI in all of this, where we've clearly seen that happened in software engineering, which is not so far as a practice from what we're working with. But I don't think it happened in data engineering yet fully. I think, of course, there's a lot of, let's say, cloud code used by engineers in that space, but I don't think anyone like owns that. It's quite open. And so I like this position where we maybe are not the biggest in the market, but I think we have a fair shot at delivering some awesome solutions on top of these three components we have under the hood.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think this goes back to like when we were in France a few weeks back over drinks, talking about as the LLMs, as the frontier models get better, like at some point this will click where based on the context we have, the development experience and all the metadata, as well as the ability to apply quality and observability automatically, like it should work. It should like click the same way it has for software engineering, but to now data engineering and data projects. And that's something that I'm incredibly excited about. I know that's a lot of the conversations we're having internally right now is how to position ourselves best for our customers to unlock that. And it's really clear that it's pretty damn close right now. Like it's pretty damn close. I'm even seeing some of our customers posting about how they're using like Cortex code from Snowflake in tandem with Coalesce. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Like there's a ton of other depth to that we've been experimenting with internally that I'm excited to start broadcasting as a business. So last couple questions. This one just comes up all the time. Like people have this perception of Coalesce because it's a visual low code tool that it's for non-technical users. What was that your impression when you saw the product, or like was that the connotation that you had for the product before you saw it? Like how did that shift after seeing it?
Yeah. So I would definitely say, yeah, I would subscribe to that. Before I spoke to you guys, I was like, oh, this is like a visual editor on top of Snowflake and very focused on Snowflake environment. At least that's how I was tracking Coalesce before we met. I think what I didn't realize was that concept of nodes and governing, let's say, the underlying SQL code by creating that abstraction and, in my mind, empowering the core set of very skilled data engineers to design them and essentially govern then the flow of data in the whole system for everyone else. To me, that is not really UI specific. I know there is a CLI solution, there is a APIs, and I think we're going to increasingly work on, let's say, plugging this into the coding agents and in general, like agentic workflows. So I think the UI was, maybe that's, you can correct me, but UI was a good entry point. But I don't see that this is a concept which is applicable over API, over MCP, over CLI, which I assume that's where we're going to go and push hard, given the kind of context around us where the coding and everything is shifting towards agents, and agents don't care about UI. So I think we're going to follow where the market's going.
Yeah, I mean, agents don't, humans do, depending on how we bridge that gap together, I think is up for us to determine. But I find ourselves in a good position to capitalize on both. Last question. I do see Rajesh asking about if we envision Coalesce being absorbed by one of the giants. I don't know. Can they afford us? Probably not. So I don't see that happening, especially as we continue to be an agnostic platform supporting more than just Snowflake and Databricks. But that's my perspective. I don't know what Petr thinks. I was going to ask you, Petr, what keeps you up at night about this next chapter? Like, what are you most excited about on the roadmap? Besides like actually literally being kept up at night by our SLT calls, which sometimes are like 11 p.m. for you. Like, is there anything that keeps you at night about moving forward?
I was going to say you, but I guess you said it already. No, well, I think what we said earlier with the Snowflake Databricks, I feel like we are in a race. At least I'm very fortunate as a technology leader to live through this transition where I feel everything is shaken up in a way that how software was built 2 years ago is just so different. I think last year I built a coding agent for, let's say, my own entertainment and learning things. And I would not have said a year ago what is possible today. And so what keeps me up at night is almost like I feel that the moment where the data engineering workflow will be reinvented in the same profound way as it happened in engineering will come. It's almost like it's a given. I just don't know when, in terms of when the customers and practitioners will be ready to work that way. And I think that's almost there. The models are getting increasingly good. I think there will be probably a few more releases when it starts to click. And then the third component in my mind is like what platform we need to build to facilitate that work for the user to leverage these new powerful models, which will be released on almost weekly basis now. So almost like in my mind, it's not about building a few AI workflows, but about building a company which can build, which has an environment in which we can ship a lot of this functionality on an ongoing basis. So I think that's definitely something I think about a lot, is how should the team operate very differently than how we used to in a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, well, all I can say is I'm incredibly grateful to be working with you and you bringing that expertise to our business, especially just based on your pedigree. I think it's going to be a massive unlock for Coalesce and all of our customers. So thank you, Petr. That was a fun conversation. I think we wrapped just on time. We're overrunning by a little bit. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate all the questions. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the next thing. But if you haven't seen what was SYNQ and is now Coalesce Quality, go check it out, coalesce.io. Request a demo. The team would love to show you what Petr and his team built. It's pretty damn awesome. So thanks, awesome. Petr. And thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thank you.
Take care.